time to send a Google Gram to Mr. Trump. I don't know what that means, but what happened next was he pulled his boxers down, sat down on the toilet, explosive situation, continued to talk to me. I was in the room. I tried to leave. I couldn't close the door because there's no fucking doors on any of it.
All right, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Fitz and Franson show. I'm Fitz.
Yep, I'm Franson.
This is a show where we talk about leadership and business growth and what it actually takes to build something that lasts.
And without lying to yourself along the way.
Yeah, that's the part that really matters. And today we're joined by a very, very special guest, someone I've known for many years now. Have a ton of respect for this guy here, he's been in the trenches of home improvement sales and built world-class teams, co-founded a very impressive organization out in the Midwest. Bob Camire, welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. Appreciate you having me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. Bob, we've been looking forward to this one. We've had a lot of guests on this show. I know you and Fitz have shared a lot of experiences, and from what he shared with me, our listeners should get a lot out of today's show. So let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, buddy. So, Bob, for those that are listening, set the stage up a little bit where we kind of cross paths. You and I started our days at Renewal by Anderson. You were running a team out in the Midwest, Indianapolis, and I was running a team at Coro in the DC market. But we got to know each other a lot better at our time at Jacuzzi. And I know you're still currently over with Bath Experts and running that. So that's where, like I said, really got to know you. Do you mind sharing, I guess, a little bit more of your journey with the listeners so they got an idea of kind of your history?
Sure. How far back do you want me to go?
I mean, kindergarten would be a great start if you don't mind.
I was born at a very young age.
I was born at a very young age. Yeah. You know, if we're going to keep this pretty sales specific, right? I got into sales. I guess my first sales job would be like a call center gig when I was in high school, like doing phone work, selling really like cheap, gimmicky golf clubs and fishing lures over the phone. So just, some real high quality stuff, but learned the power of scripting. And that was like my first real eye opener of like, wow, if I just say these words and with some inflection, people will say yes more than they won't. So it was an interesting little learning experience there. And then that was just, part-time through high school, that kind of thing. And I never really considered a career in sales beyond making a few extra bucks doing stuff like that. Then through college, I worked kind of part-time again in another call center. And just kind of one thing led to another that I just kept coming back to that sales environment. It was a pretty heavy call center at first. And once I graduated school, I said, all right, I'm going to go do the thing that I got a degree in, which was archaeology. Which, as soon as I learned that there was a lot less, punching Nazis and finding the Holy Grail, I became quickly disillusioned.
Sure.
And realized I was like, man, I was making more money part-time selling stuff over the phone or what have you. Mm-hmm. So went back and kind of embraced that more full-time after a couple of years of, being dirty and working really hard out in the woods. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, probably just go. And you also couldn't make any money. So that was a big part of that calculation. But I got into in-home, really true in-home sales, working for a hot tub company. About 2008, I started my first in-home selling job out in San Diego. So I was 23, 24 years old and learned how to sell in-home. You're just selling hot tubs, no samples really, just a couple of, pieces of acrylic, color samples, and definitely not a need. It was definitely a nice to have type of thing.
Yeah.
So it was a really good experience for, from a product perspective to learn how to sell something like that. And then when I got into Windows with RBA in 2009, 2010, somewhere around there, I was like, well, people need Windows. So this is going to be a lot easier. At least that's how I thought about it. So that's where the journey began there. And I did canvassing, I did call center work. I did just a little bit of everything throughout that time period, but was pretty steady and productive as a sales rep and organized. So, story old as time, that becomes the sales manager.
Sure.
The guy who's reasonably organized and can put up reasonable numbers becomes this de facto manager. So that's kind of how that went. So I was with RBA from 2009 to 2019. So it's about 10 years. And it was a lot of fun. We built I was employee number 8 on the books there. When we started it, it was a small group. By the time I left, it was well over $100 million and a few hundred employees, and kind of wild. But had an opportunity to start Bath Experts in 2019, the middle part of 2019, and we've been at it ever since. It's been a crazy. I mean, we didn't in the business plan at the 8-month mark. We didn't have COVID penciled in
Yeah, right.
as part of the business plan, part of the model. But that came and hit us like a freight train, like it did everybody else. And yeah, we just continue to try to hang on and be productive and grow the business. I mean, we went from one location to 8 locations in 6 years, and across Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky. And we're over 200 employees now, and it's just a wild experience for sure. So it's a little bit of my background, and all that time has just been really heavily on the sales side, leading sales teams, building sales teams, trying to keep the culture right. And yeah, that's my story. Sticking to it.
Yeah, it's an awesome story. I know and one of the things that I've always enjoyed about our friendship and being a colleague with you over the years, Bob, and it's apparent in your background too, right? So Bob's eclectic background. He does probably as good a job, if not a better job, of anybody I've ever met of seeing kind of like the whole like picture. I joke, and we were joking before we got on the show that Bob's like the smart one in our friendship, and I'm the meathead. Like I'm like straightforward and like we'll run hard into a brick wall, and Bob will like see the entire wall. So he's very good at like seeing like all angles. And I think that's because of your background and having all the experiences that you have. So, but the journey that you guys have been on with that growth, and I had started my role in the jacuzzi dealer, the same thing when when COVID hit, I'm sure it was a little nerve wracking had have been left RBA, and all of a sudden the whole world shuts down. It's like, cool, this is great timing. And there was a couple of weeks there where it was touch and go. For sure.
Cool.
So, but it's been awesome to watch, and you guys have built something really cool out there for sure.
Thanks. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. So I like the story too. I kind of laugh. I talk to young people and they're like, I need to go to college and get a degree. And then if I'm in a room with other adults, I'm like, what's your degree? Are you using it? Most of them are not using their degree. And I'm like, there's value in college. I get it. But, just your story too is so similar to others where we had an idea and then we're like, oh, I have to pay the bills, or, oh, I have a natural skill or affinity in some other aspect of life that I didn't know about. You touched a little bit about Bath Experts. Can you talk maybe a little bit more about it? Like it just somebody, a friend of yours or you guys are like, let's start a Bath Experts company and then let's just scale it quickly.
Yeah, the story goes roughly. I was working with the good luck to be working with a bunch of guys, myself, Steve, Jeff, Kurt, and Sam. We were all working together at RBA for I was there for ultimately about 10 years. Sam was with the organization for longer than that, and collectively we've been there forever. And we just had an opportunity to strike out on our own and start something just through life circumstances, the good, the bad, the ugly, like just everything kind of comes together at once. And it was kind of hold your breath and jump moment for all of us. But yeah, we started in July of 2019, and it was just really the 4 of us, myself, Steve, Jeff, and Kurt, that started. Sam came on a little bit later down the road, a year or two later, and helped us build. Once we started expanding into Ohio, he was critical for that piece of it and helping us grow the business. But yeah, it was really just 4 guys that worked really well together at a high, and we all held rather higher positions at RBA. And it was, like I said, just an opportunity. The timing worked out, and we decided we would make a jump and go for it. Certainly no telling of this story would be complete without mentioning that, like, just a couple of years into it, we lost our founder. Steve Woodward passed away really unexpectedly. And that absolutely brought us to our knees, really shook us to the core. And, he was a majority owner in the business, and it took lots of, there was a lot of uncertainty in how we could keep the thing moving forward. And we were really lucky to have, just the right people in the right place to help us navigate that and get it sorted out. And we continue to try to make Steve proud, do him right. So yeah, it was, it's been a wild journey, man. And like the growing it and scaling it fast, that wasn't by design necessarily. That was just as opportunities presented themselves. You can't really say no.
Mm-hmm.
You have to strike while the iron's hot and figure it out. So we've been doing that kind of ever since. There was no formula written out that says we're going to add this market by this time. And so we had some like rough ideas, but we didn't know it would go so fast and quite so big. But that's okay. We're here for it.
That's awesome.
Working out all right.
Yeah. I run Powerful Media, which is a digital marketing agency, and I get to talk to a lot of guys with a dream, right? And they come to me and they're like, it's just me, maybe my son. We're doing the work, we're showing up at the houses, and being a part of those journeys is just a ton of fun. And like you said, you didn't really know what you were going to come up with. You're just like, oh, there's an opportunity. Let's just take it and see what it turns into.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. So you guys are a exclusive jacuzzi dealer?
We do the jacuzzi bath remodel program, and yeah, it's been great. They're a great partner to have. We launched a cabinet refacing division last year as well. We're dipping our toes in the water and trying to add to our portfolio a little bit. Totally new product line, new skill sets, new problems, new challenges, all that goes with it. But it's an interesting space, and we're just trying to break into it a little bit.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
It's a good addition, and I know that jacuzzi brand obviously carries some weight going into the home and helps out a little bit. But you guys have built a good brand around yourself and your markets as well too, and the philosophy that you bring into the sales process is huge in helping with that. With our industry, obviously, you and I cut our teeth carrying a bag into the home ourselves and taking a lot of no's, but also getting our fair share of yeses at the same time. We grew up in a world of the one call close scenario, and that's still alive today, but there's definitely a growing segment of the population, I think, talking about maybe that's starting to kind of fizzle a little bit and die. When you look at the in-home process and kind of the start to finish consultation that a sales rep goes through, you mind sharing kind of like your, I guess, 30,000 foot view at that philosophy and what that looks like?
Yeah. It's a timely question because we're wrestling with it right now. So everything, like you said, everything that we cut our teeth on was all that really traditional one call close material and philosophy and approach. And we, when I started to put together the sales process for Bath Experts, I'm pretty sure I just like Control A, copy paste from my window document to a new Google Doc and just changed windows to baths. And I didn't have much time to think about it because COVID hit, shortly thereafter. Right. So I was always of the mind, I'd like to refine this at some point, but for right now, as we figure this out, let's just stick with a process that I'm really familiar with and is tried and true. So we did that. And then COVID came, and it didn't really matter what your process was. As long as you weren't offending people in the home, you were going to sell, show up, smile, ask for the business. You were probably going to get some deals. And along the way, this is all with a lot of hindsight now, right? But along the way, I think I certainly lost focus on the execution of that process because it didn't really matter that much.
Mm-hmm.
At least that was my philosophy on it, right? It seemed we were selling a ton and everyone was fat and happy. And then when, again, I think COVID artificially pulled demand forward, right? So that was a big deal. I remember sitting at a lot of kitchen tables. At that time, I was still running a lot of appointments. And I remember in the summer of COVID, people saying, yeah, this was going to be our trip to Europe, but we're not going there. So we're going to do this. Right. And an equal number of people, and the other half of the people who bought said, yeah, we were going to do this project, but it wasn't going to be until at least a couple of years down the road. So when everybody says, we were going to do this a couple of years down the road, those people are now out of the market a couple of years down the road.
Right.
Yeah.
So you artificially pull this demand into an environment that is really sales friendly. And once you eclipse that moment in time, it's back to reality and possibly even worse, possibly even harder than it was previously. Once we hit that COVID bubble kind of burst, we continued to see growth somewhat organically. Prices skyrocketed too. I mean, our average order when we started was like $7,500 and now it's 17,000. So like, it's really easy to get lost in the metrics when you're talking about growth and revenue and things like that relative to average order size, close rates, that sort of thing. So when the burst happened, when the bubble popped, I was really scratching my head around like, all right, conversion rates are low, leads are light, what's going on? And this is where I'm coming around now to trying to answer your question here. But I needed that context. I started to look at the sales process as maybe the problem. Just like you said, there's a lot of chatter in the industry and just kind of in the zeitgeist around maybe this one call close thing is going by the wayside. And I don't, I kind of bought into that to a certain degree. And I was like, well, surely the best opportunity to get the business is going to be while you're there. There's no question about that. How you go about that though might need to be tweaked a little bit. And what we ended up doing was really swinging the pendulum the other way, making the sales process much more fluid, much more dynamic, and making it a very customer centric, customer first approach, and giving the homeowner this, the idea was like, let's give them an incredible in-home experience with that rep. None of that is bad. That's all good.
Yeah.
That's all really good. But there's a reason why that one call close process existed and exists now and was successful then and can still be successful now. But what it requires, I think now, is it needs to be modernized. We're in home improvement, we're in renovation, yet we use a model that hasn't been really renovated in decades.
Yeah.
So it's chock full of, really bad tie downs, You would agree with that, wouldn't you, Fitz?
Yeah.
You wouldn't put this kind of window in your home, would you, Mr. Jones? And it's like, okay, there's got to be a better way to do that. And I think that's where the perception of, oh man, is the one call close dying? Is it going by the wayside? I think it's those strategies and tactics that were kind of embedded into that model just really need to be refreshed. But the core principles and philosophies are still very solid and just need some updating, need some sprucing up and some modernization for this selling environment.
It's funny, we were talking about, I was talking about this with somebody the other day, and I was the way they were presenting price, right? And it was they present a guaranteed price for a period of time, and then they just stop talking. And he was like, well, it's he who speaks first loses. And I was like, what are we, 90? Like, we're human beings. So you're just going to sit there in awkward silence until they yell at you or ask you to leave? Like, you have to talk.
Yeah.
Like, and you also, they signed up for Jay's team put out an ad for a March promotion, and that's why they called. Give them the promotion. Like, what are we doing? Kind of thing. And it's like, again, like I remember my dad was a sales rep. I ran my first in-home sales appointment when I was 12 with him.
Yep.
And that's the stuff that my dad was trained to do back then. And he would even tell you in his late 70s, like, that's awkward. Don't do that anymore, kind of thing. It's the same kind of modernization kind of stuff of like, Jay's heard me say this, I'm unapologetically a salesperson. I always think that it's funny. We call our guys design consultants or bathroom experts or concrete experts. Like, they know you're a salesperson. They know why you're there, and they know why, to your point, like, well, you would agree with that. Like, they know why you're asking that question. Just be genuine and be a human being, I think is the right thing. So I think you're right. Be a human salesperson, and that's okay.
Yeah. There are these real, things in conflict around, like, you have this system that is very salesy, right? This old model, right? That's very, you would definitely consider it very salesy. And then you're trying to wedge it into a culture that's trying to not be salesy, where by calling them design consultants. And there's this cognitive dissonance between these two things where you're trying to reconcile both. No, yeah, I agree. We are sales pros, and there's nothing there. Certainly it is something that has had a bad rap for a long time because of a lot of bad actors. But like, if I don't think that we should allow those bad actors to define what we do and how we do it. And I think there's a big opportunity to really re-embrace the idea of selling And like, there's nothing wrong with getting up every day, unless you're selling snake oil, unless you're selling a product or a service or taking advantage of people. If you're, you have their best intentions in mind, and like you're selling a service that can really help solve a problem for them, I think it's your obligation to do everything that you can to help solve that problem.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. And we've seen a lot of people across the industry that we're mostly serving, which is the concrete coatings niche, and they go, I don't want to get in the home and pressure them to sell, and they've looked at like pricing calculators on their websites and stuff like this, and then they turn around and go, where are all my leads?
Yeah.
And so they kind of come from that other side of this story where they're even saying, well, same day close is like unethical, or I'm just not a high pressure salesperson and I can't do it that way. And so like maybe you could say a little bit more about how you have renovated your own sales methodology, where maybe you could do a comparison of it used to be this way, but now it's this way, but it's still same day.
Yeah, I think, and I'm fresh off of this exercise. Like, this was in the last couple of weeks, has really been, because when we made that transition last year to something that was less focused on the one quality, still the hope and the idea was to get the business while you were there that day, but there weren't the internal mechanisms to push that along. We saw a dip in sales, which was expected because it's a new process and reps are wrapping their heads around it. And then we saw a return straight to the plateau that we were on previously. So like a net neutral situation, which really made me think of like, okay, wow, that's, we got to get back to, I think I fixed the wrong problem, basically.
Right.
Which was, it wasn't the methodology necessarily. It was the way it was being executed. And it was the way we were thinking about accountability across our sales teams and markets. And so, somebody that has helped me really start to wrap my head around this. I know you guys know Joe Downey, it has helped, is helping me and continues to help us kind of figure this thing out a little bit. He's been an awesome partner in this process. But, what was different back in the day was, you don't hit him with you hit him at the end with the pricing promo. The today incentive comes at the very end. It's like, okay,
That's pressure.
That's pressure. That's a recipe for disaster. If you can sprinkle in along the way, hey guys, if at the end it makes sense, we have a rewards program. Happy to tell you about it if you're interested. That's just an easy way to start sprinkling that in. Another big thing, and this came actually from, our time with kind of retweaking and reinventing the process, where we would put the only thing the customer wants when you walk through the door is a price and for you to leave in that order as fast as possible. So it has always been, hold the price close to the vest until the end. And like, also you got to hint at the price along the way, right? Price conditioning. So it's like, well, which one is it? Do you hang it to the end or do you tell them up front? But like, it just seemed to me has always been weird to me. Like you don't want to tell them too much, but you don't want to tell them too little. So you got to kind of sprinkle it in along the way. And one of the things we started doing and stolen shamelessly from other home improvement guys that are doing this is something like an earlier price presentation, where in your warm up, in your inspection, hey guys, we just did a bathroom like this for Mr. Jones down the road. Let me show you a picture of what it looked like and have some prices and monthly payments right next to it. Yeah, this is what they paid for a project like that. And this is a monthly payment that, was comfortable for them. And you're showing a real price with a real monthly payment with, and you're 10 minutes into the appointment. That is, that would have never flown,
Yeah.
5, 10, 15 years ago. Like that was, you would never, ever even think about doing something like that. And I think, that transparency is what people are looking for. So the model is fine. It, like I said, needs to be updated and it needs to become more transparent. And I think it will work just fine once it's kind of modernized again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. You reminded me of a ride along that I went on with. He was a rep for me for a period of time, but then he actually became a manager with me. A good friend of mine. He's running his own company now, and I went on a ride along with him, and he was like, "All right, just do me a favor. You're not going to like this thing that I'm doing, but you just can't interrupt." And I was like, "This isn't a great way to start a ride along with your manager. Like, don't tell me I'm not going to like what you're doing, but I'm not allowed to interrupt." He said, "You just can't interrupt." And I was like, okay, fine. And so we're doing cost versus values at Renewal by Anderson. And he goes through cost versus value, and then he breaks out the pricing tool. And he goes, so let me show you what that looks like for our window. And he literally builds the window before we've measured or anything. And again, we're still old school at that point where we're not doing it. And I'm going like, what are you doing? And it took every like ounce of me not to be like, hold on, I think he hit his head. He doesn't need to do this yet. And he prices up the window. And he goes, so what they're telling you is like, for us, that exact spec'd out window would be this, but we haven't measured yours yet. And then he goes in and says, did a similar project just down the road like this. And I think we got our payment somewhere between here and here. He, says, do you have any questions? He goes, I actually left my tape measure in the car. I'll be right back. I'll go grab that and we'll measure it up. We walk out and I was like, what the fuck are you doing? He goes, dude, you're here because it's working. And he, cause that's why I wanted to go ride with him. He was on fire and I wanted to see what he was doing. He goes, this is the only thing I've changed. And I was like, okay. He goes, just watch. When we go back in the house, something's different. We went back in the house. It was the craziest thing. We go back in the house and immediately they started going, so for a payment around this, like how much of the job could we do? And he's like, well, I don't know. Let's start measuring and find out, right? Kind of thing. And I'm sitting there going like, what? Like, how did that work? And he's like, I don't know. I have no idea. And I don't know what possessed me to try it, but I've been doing it. I was like, cool. We're going to go back to the office. We're going to record you doing that. And also, by the way, you're teaching everybody else how to do this now. And we started doing it. It was the wildest thing. And it was just interesting how like all of a sudden it's like this, to your point, this transparency of wall has been broken down. And like, I'm not apologizing for my pricing. It's matter of fact. I'm building great value in who we are, what we do, and how we're going to take care of you. And this is what it costs to get that done. Could you get it cheaper? Sure. But cheaper gets you something different. It's up to you to decide whether you want it or not. So I don't want to go back to your days in the house, or you can go back to the days selling the fishing lures, whatever makes sense to you here. Maybe you could tell us about a time that your worst sales call ever.
Oh, no.
Yeah, come on, man.
Oh, no, man.
This is one we're going to send directly to your team, by the way.
Sure.
Yeah.
Man, there's some real material to choose from. But I think, without question, probably the wildest. And we're talking about like an insane story, right? We're not talking like it was a really challenging appointment, but I sold it. No, we're talking like just insanity.
Yeah. You could end up with the one you sold, right? Like I have no idea how that stumbled into that, but sure.
Yeah, no, this one was not, we were not selling this one. Anyway, it was early days at Bath Experts, and I was still running the lion's share of the appointments. I was maybe starting to train a sales rep, but it was still just basically me out there running. And I get a lead out by like the Illinois line, and it's like an hour and 45 minutes, whatever, out there. It is a really crappy day out. It is like the rainy, sleety, snowy kind of situation, and we are, just making our way out to this house. I never, when I started running leads, like Zillow wasn't a thing. So I never got in the habit of like looking at, cause it didn't freaking matter. I was going anyway.
Right. Yeah. Right.
So I show up at this place, and it's a trailer, and I've sold plenty of those before, but not like this one. So I get out, and this was like 2020, 2021. And this isn't meant to, there's no political bent to this story in any way, shape, or form. I'm just telling you the facts. The guy was a big Trump supporter, lots of signs, lots of flags. And I get in there, and it was a real wreck in the house. The carpet had been pulled up because the dogs had just, that was the whole situation. So the stench was pretty rough, and he was in his finest pair of stained boxers. Just, like the spaghetti stained kind of grayish white t-shirt.
Nice.
So we're off to a really good start. I've been in places like this and I've sold them. Like, it's not.
Of course. For the record, to interrupt, these are the things that Jay and the marketing team never have to deal with.
They never get to see.
Yeah, that's right.
Never.
Yeah. So he's like, let me show you the bathroom, what we have done. I was like, yeah, let's take a peek. The place has never been cleaned. Not like it hasn't been cleaned in a while. It just has never been cleaned. Like, there's no it's just never happened. So in the bathroom was, I mean, it was an absolute horror show. Everything was covered in filth of all different kinds.
Yeah.
And he shows me where he wants to like knock this wall out and move this here. And I was like, well, we can't do that. I was like, here's what we could do. And I explained like what was possible within our scope of work. And there was there were no doors, like interior doors. All those interior doors had been taken off because who needs those?
Right.
And they were kind of laid
airflow.
out. Yeah, better airflow for sure. So I'm explaining like, hey man, I'm really sorry. Like we can't do exactly what you're hoping we can do here. And he said something to the effect of like, oh, well, damn it, whatever, blah, blah, blah. I said, all right. He goes, well, the only thing left to do, and to this day, I don't know what this actually means, but he said, it's time to send a Google Gram to Mr. Trump. I don't know what that means, but what happened next was he pulled his boxers down, sat down on the toilet, and explosive situation, okay? And continued to talk to me. I was in the room. I tried to leave. I couldn't close the door because there's no fucking doors on any of it. And that. And he just continued to talk to me like about, what if we moved this there and then this? Oh. And I was like,
I'm gonna go now.
yeah, like he was like, you know, LBJ used to hold meetings. I don't know if anybody's like history buffs here, but LBJ would sit on the toilet and, you know, but this guy wasn't passing like landmark civil rights legislation.
I mean, maybe the next day, you don't know.
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. But I don't know what any of that meant. And it was the most insane set of circumstances. And at no point could I predict what was going to happen next.
I would not have guessed that was going to be the end of the story. I could tell you that. Not in a million years would I have guessed that.
That was probably up there. Number one, weirdest, craziest thing that's happened in a home.
That's a good one. Jay, next time one of the marketers complain about like, well, they were really hard in the Facebook Messenger. Have they ever taken a shit in front of you? No. Okay.
That's right.
You're having a pretty good day.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's a good story right there. I don't even know what I would do. I'd be like, I'll see you later.
Yeah, no, I hung out and I removed myself as quick as I could from that bathroom. And I actually had the thought, I was like, well, I don't want to be rude. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, and then he said, well, I couldn't decide to do anything anyway because my wife's not home. I was like, somebody said, that's my guy.
That's my guy.
Yep. That's my guy. I was like, good for you, dude.
Good for you. There's somebody for everybody.
There's somebody for everybody.
Yeah.
Somebody for everybody.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you could have asked him to CC you in that Google Gram that goes to Trump.
Be like,
keep me in the loop if you would.
Yeah. And again, I tell this story with no political bent. It's just like, these are the facts. Like, but I don't know what that meant. Was that good? Was that bad? He found out I couldn't do what he needed from a scope of work perspective. And he just ripped his pants off and took a violent shit in front of me.
Wow. That's incredible. That's incredible.
And that's why our listeners are excited to be salespeople.
That's right.
Stories like that.
Yeah. Fitz is like,
that's awesome.
Last time Bob's on the podcast.
Oh, man, this is going to be the most watched episode. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Man, that's hilarious. Well, let's maybe talk about something different.
Sure. I'd love to. You asked for that.
That was good.
Yeah, that was good. Let's talk about building teams. You've talked about bringing bath experts from one location to 8 over 6 years and just the development of the team. And so let's talk about building the teams a little bit. You are the VP of sales.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that the title? And you're in multiple markets, 3 states. It means that you're not really selling anymore, but you're building and leading the whole sales organization. So what does that shift look like for you from a rep to a leader?
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely a slow, steady progression. Sometimes it didn't feel slow. Sometimes, it happened really fast. But like once I got up to that 8, 10, 12 sales rep mark, I was like, I need somebody to help me out with the day-to-day stuff here. So I hired a leader, and John's still with us, does an awesome job. He was my kind of right-hand guy as we continued to grow and add territories and add markets. And while this all was happening too, this new technology hit us, right? Rilla came along. Mm-hmm. And because we have such an expansive geography, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, like those are some, they look only this big on the map, but once you get out there driving, it turns out to be, they're pretty big. I think one of the, I guess I call it a strategic mistake. I don't know, but I was seduced into thinking that, all right, well, we got Rilla, and we've only got 1 or 2 reps in this new location, this new market. So maybe we don't need somebody like boots on the ground there just to manage those 1 or 2 people. We could probably do this remotely with Rilla. And Rilla is an incredibly powerful tool. I'd recommend it or any, thing like it to sales leaders. But the lesson that was learned was that nothing replaces boots on the ground. And that we continue to add territories and add markets over this wide geography, and continue to add sales coaches that worked, kind of under John. It's not that it couldn't work or, but it was really hard to create accountability because everybody was helping everybody. So we decided this year to kind of decentralize that. And we hired more managers in those kind of remote outposts, so to speak, to, even if there were only a couple of reps there, we need somebody there to lead them on the ground. So the team has they've been having a lot of change thrown at them. And it's been, I'm sure, a bit of whiplash for some of these folks. But I think that's just part of growing something really quickly, is there has to be change along the way. And if you make a mistake, just make another decision. Keep going. Don't get paralysis by analysis. You got to try something. If it doesn't work, you got to be able to shift really quickly. So that's kind of how our teams are now structured, where we got a very traditional, a manager, and then sales reps that they are directly accountable for.
Yeah. But when you're growing a team and you're bringing in sales reps, what are, if you had to identify 2 or 3, important non-negotiable qualities you look for in a salesperson, what would those be?
It's really just a desire to do well for themselves and their families, and we want them to be hungry. We don't want them to be starving. That's we've all been there, right? We hire the rep who's starving and they don't have gas to get to their appointments, but you want the rep that's really hungry for the life-changing opportunity that it really is. Not this is a job I work and it, I can make pretty good money at it, but it also gives me a lot of flexibility. So I take a lot of time off, and it's that's fine. One of our very, very best sales reps in our organization took a month off last year and went overseas with his family, and it was awesome. That's the best. And he hustles all the rest of the time. And so it's I think it's work ethic, and that's hard to figure out in an interview. That's really until you see it. But work ethic, desire to get out there and just really do the job. And open-mindedness to learning a system or a process that they might not be used to. Experience is a real double-edged sword for us in our world, right? If you get the rep that is coming over from another company that, claims to have been the top rep, I was the best, and I do things my way, and it's okay, all right, this is going to go 1 of 2 ways really fast. I probably know which way it's going to go. So, just, a desire, a humbleness, and eagerness to get out there and work hard, and then a willingness to follow a process and have some real self accountability. All the leads suck. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Let's get that out of the way first, and now that that's established, what is your part in this? What is your role in this?
I like it. Jay and I, have this conversation on a regular basis in working with some of the clients we work with as well too, about how much of it is natural ability in whatever the role is you're hiring for, and how much of it is, trainable. So I guess where do you land on that? How much of it, you mentioned getting guys in with experience versus not experienced people. So do you believe that people are naturally born salespeople, or do you believe that you can bring them in and train them to be salespeople?
I think you can train people to be salespeople. 100%. Yeah, that's my take on it. I don't think you can train, work ethic or desire. That's the, tangible there. But if they're eager to learn, I didn't know how to sell, right? I mean, it was okay, I read a lot about it. I committed to understanding and learning different processes based on what I was selling, and whether it was call center scripting or confirmation scripting or sales processes. It's the time you spend by yourself, writing things out in your own words, doing those little things that make the difference. That's something I learned. I wasn't, and I wasn't born with that, right?
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. That's good. It's psychology. It's the nature versus nurture.
Yeah.
I think that there are temperaments that tend to be more outgoing or more reserved. But I think to your point, and I'll echo it, I think being teachable and curious allows just about any personality type to fit into any role as long as they're willing to listen and learn. So yeah. That's good.
I've taken the disc profile, and it would suggest that I would not be very good at this.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, I wasn't the best in the world, but I was
Mm-hmm.
consistent and above average for all of the time I spent doing it.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I get to talk to sales guys a lot because, I like your comment, all the leads suck. Let's
Yeah.
move on from that. And they call me and talk to me about it. And I've talked to all types, the hardcore type A's that are like, get in, get it sold, conquer, win. And then I've got a couple of guys that I talk to, they close like 50, 60, 70%. And I'm like, what are you doing? And they go, well, I just show up and make a friend. And these are like Southern, they have like this sweet Southern accent and, oh, hey, Mrs. Jones, how can I help you today? And one of them, he's like, I spent 2 hours with Mrs. Jones. And he's like, now she's having me do her garage, her pool deck, her, for the concrete coating side.
Yeah.
And so you do really get to see all that stuff. So one of the things that you said early on, you said you get to manage culture. So why don't we talk about that for a minute? Bath Experts has a 4.9 rating over 1,200 reviews, and that definitely doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah.
So when you look at the culture that you've been a part of creating, what does it look like? And how would you say that internal culture connects to the customer experience?
Yeah. So it starts with your employees, right? The example that you set, the modeling that you set for them. So you're not you can't build a better culture than what you have yourself. So between me and my business partners, we know that people look at what we do, what we say, how we react to problems, so if you're leading that group and there's a problem and it's a real problem, how you respond and react to that, it will set the tone for them and how they respond and react to problems and challenges. And that's all this is, just all day long problems. That is all the entire, and I'm sure that's true of all other industries too. But for us, it's just problem solving, one thing after another. And, so there's that, there's what you tolerate in employees, right? I've had we've parted ways with really high performing reps because they're cancerous to the team, right? I'll do that in a heartbeat. We protect the culture pretty fiercely. So making folks understand that there's no, just because you might be really successful doesn't entitle you to treat employees or customers or anybody any differently or in any other way with total respect. And so it's what you tolerate. And then you got to trust the people to do their jobs. That is why you hired them. So give them the autonomy to figure it out and make mistakes. There's no mistake that any one employee can make that's just be able to put you out of business, right? So if they screw something up, they screwed it up. Have a conversation with them and figure it out. But the fear of something going wrong or an employee messing something up, if you just micromanage the crap out of that person because you're afraid they will screw something up, that's a recipe for people feeling like you're just constantly over their shoulder. So it's start with yourself, model the behavior you want to see, what you tolerate, and then let people do their job. That's why you hired them. And if you do those three things, I think generally speaking, you at least create an environment where a decent culture can exist, and as much as you can kind of get out of the way, because at some point, culture is this really nebulous thing. You can't see it, but you know it when you feel it. And it's really, it's a bizarre kind of thing that you're trying to chase down every day. And it's made in really, really, really small moments. It's not these big grand gestures. It's how you speak to an employee, how you speak to a customer. Yeah. So
I think you bring up a
That's
good
good.
point too, though, mentioning like the top performer and having to move on from them. I think that it's tested in those moments. And unfortunately, too many of us leaders, well, all of us leaders are always going to be tested with that moment at one point or another.
Yeah.
And that's the true test of your culture, whether it is there or not, and whether you're going to defend it or not, right? And you can preach it and say it and write it on the wall all you want, but unless you're going to be willing to make the decision to stick to it or not,
Yeah.
that's really what it is. So it may be kind of a fleeting moment, but it's a decision to keep it or not at that point. So it's easier said than done because that volume is nice to have. There's no doubt about it,
For
but
sure. Yeah.
in the long run, it'll pay itself back. So we've covered a lot of ground, but one thing we like to do is take our guests through a segment, couple quick questions with you,
Sure.
and get maybe some insight or some takeaways for the listeners out there. So we'll give you a couple quick questions here and get your quick response on it, and see if the listeners can grab a note or two from you. So I'll let Jay start us off here.
Yeah. So, best sales advice you ever got in 10 words or less.
Trust the process.
Love it.
Good.
That's a good one. All right. How about one thing most sales managers get wrong?
I think it can be easy to look at numbers and not people.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm guilty of it as much as anybody over my career, right, man? It's like, nah, there's a person back there behind that
Mhm.
number, whatever that number is. And usually if you're looking at a number, it's not because it's great.
Yeah.
So why don't you go dig into that and figure out what's going on with that person and
That's a
see
good
if you
one.
can help that person. I think it's easy to just look at numbers back, well, they're below their quota again, or, below close rate. And yeah.
Yeah. Numbers are the start of the story. The people are the finish of it for sure.
Yeah.
I like it. All right. How about Jay? You got the next one there?
Yeah. Let's do the book that every person in home improvement sales should read right now.
I've read a bunch. I'm going to give you the most recent one that I've read. It was a recommendation from Joe Downey, and it's really quite good. Sales Contractor's Roadmap by John DeRosa.
Okay.
Yeah, it's quite good. Really like plain spoken, very simple, very straightforward. A solid approach to the one call process without. It's a refresh on the process. I think kind of what we were talking about at the top of the call.
Good one. If you're listening, write it down. I have not read that one, so I'll check it out myself. So, well, Bob, this has been an awesome conversation, man.
Yeah.
Genuinely, I appreciate you coming on. It's always a pleasure talking to you, sir.
Yeah,
You're giving
likewise.
those listening a lot to think about, and hopefully add into their game, and building teams and growing sales and leadership. And I appreciate you being here, sir.
Yeah, glad to do it. Thank you guys both so much. It's been fun.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. And for everyone listening, if you're a homeowner in the Indiana, Ohio, or Kentucky area, and you're thinking about a bathroom remodel, you guys now know who exactly to call. So, and also, if you are a sales leader or business owner and you want to see what a world-class operation looks like, give Bob a follow on LinkedIn.
Yeah. And for everyone who's stuck with us today, I hope you walked away with something real that you can use. A new way to think about sales, maybe your team, or I don't know, maybe a little bit of self-development there. So that's why we put the show on. So if you could do us a favor, though, like and subscribe, ring the bell, tell a friend about it, as always, right? And we appreciate that stuff.
Yeah, we'll see you next time on the Fitz and Franson Show.
Happy hunting, everybody.